on the parsha that makes Minberg go crazy. So we'll see. We'll see if we can get to that. It's my favorite of Chaim Shmulevitz because it made him into like a real Haisa Chusid. Okay, so yesterday, just to remind myself, we learned. We started off today learning about a Rasha Orim. We went into the problems with someone who learned Torah but wasn't Mishamash Talmidei Chachamim. Rashi says there's 3 problems why he can't paskin, because he doesn't know sometimes a Mishnah is like a Yachad and we don't follow that Mishnah. He doesn't know who he paskin like, and in general he doesn't know how to compare things to another because he didn't do Shimush. So that's why it's a person who didn't do Shimush and paskins and takes upon himself to paskin is somebody who is a Rosh Aram. Then we learned about what the Isha Prusha, what that is. But we learned an interesting halacha that although someone who is not royu to paskin shouldn't paskin, vatsumim kol harugeha. From there we learned that someone who is able to paskin, in fact, has to paskin, and it's a big avla if such a person doesn't paskin. And this is what the Chuvish Rabbi Akiva Eiger quotes why he took on to paskin. Then we had a different type of prushin. Basically, the Gemara taught us that someone who's trying to act all frum, but he's really a fake phony and a fraud, he's going to be punished. But we also learned that Parish Me'ahava and Parish Me'ira, meaning somebody who's ehrlich because he wants to get the schar of the mitzvah, or because he's afraid of the Avera, that's called mitoich shaloi lishma, bolishma, and that's in fact admirable. Gewaltig. Then we learned the Mishnah, we should really start from the Mishnah again because we're in the middle of the Mishnah. We'll just run through it very quickly. Shimon argues and says, "Ein schus toile b'mayim hamorim." The schus will not push off the inevitable by the mayim hamorim. The im ata oimer schus toile b'mayim hamorim, and if you're going to want to say that it does, that's a problem because matka ata es hamayim b'fnei kol hanoshim hashoysos. First, you're going to remove the deterrent. People aren't going to be afraid. And second of all, someone who does come out innocent won't even get that clean slate because her friends, the yentis, are going to say Tameo, saying she's really Tamei. Ella Shatol Salem Schos. Thank you so much. Rabbi Yomer, one day I'm going to come early and make for myself and make for you. But the Val I've been pooping in every day. I haven't been sleeping in. I've been pushing the snooze button. Okay, Rabbi Yomer has schus toila b'mayim hamaorim. The schus is toila, but she's not exactly going to improve. She's not going to blossom. But ve'eni yeledes ve'eni mishabeches el mishnavno ve'eleches. L'soif at the end he may say ba'ishamisa her body will deteriorate, albeit slowly. Nitmas minchasa. So this is what excuse me, what you're focusing on. Nitmas minchasa actually kitcha bechli. If the mincha became tummy while it was still kedushas bedek habayis, then areka chala menachos is like any other mincha, which is bedek habayis. The tifta you could be paid it, and therefore with the money you'll buy a new mincha, and the mincha that became tamei is now chulin, and you can use it chulin tamei. But if that's kedushas aguf, areka chala menachos v'sisarif, then it's like any other mincha with kedushas aguf, like a carbon, and you have to burn it. The elush mincha say in the srafa is the following list are people who their menachos get burnt. Number 1, by meres tamei anilach. She said, "I'm tamei." The shabo la edim she tameya. Or if edim came that she was tameya, v'ha oimeres eini shoyse. Or if she says, "I don't want to drink," the shabayla eini reitzal ashkoy. So if her husband doesn't want to be masker her, he doesn't want to go through with it. Or v'shabayla ba'aleh b'derech. Or if her husband was bala b'derech, which means he's not menuka ma'abayin, and therefore it will not be boidik. So therefore, if it's not going to be boidik, you can't use the mincha. Okay. Any woman who's married to a kohen, even though we did say that it is her mincha, Tosfos has an arichas on it, but he does have some chelik in it, And therefore, minchasem nisrafis, because there's a rule that any time a kohen brings a mincha, as Rashi quotes, the whole minchas kohen kolol tia loy seyachel. Well, everyone who brings a mincha, only the kmitzas brought on the mizbeach, and the rest of it eaten by kehanim. When the kohen brings a mincha, there is no kmitzah done. The whole mincha is put on the mizbeach, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Bas Yisrael shenisas lekohen, a Bas Yisrael who married a kohen. So she is the person who is, her mincha will be completely burned. Her minchas and nisrefes. But for kohen shenisas the Yisrael, but a girl who was the daughter of a kohen who married a Yisrael, her minchas and nechelas, because she's now like a regular Yisraelis. Ma bein kohen lekehenes. What's the difference between a kohen and a kohenes? And this means a Bas Yisrael who married a kohen versus a Bas Kohen who married a Yisrael. So the difference is, Dr. Mishnah, minchas kohenes nechelas, the mincha of a kohenes who's married to a Yisrael, or if she's not married to a kohen, even if she's single, it's nechelas. Minchas kohen ain't nechelas. Only the mincha of a kohen is not nechelas. That's one difference. Another difference, kohenes mischalelas. A kohenes, a bas kohen, could eat truma as a member of her father's household. But if she was nivela leposela, she had relations with someone who she wasn't allowed to have, she's now apostle, and she may no longer eat truma, and she, of course, may no longer marry a kohen. The kohen ain't mischalel, but a kohen, even if he is living with someone who is not proper, as Rashi says, nasa grusha, zoyna v'chalola, he is a chalal, but he's not mischalel. The tam d'chulu masnisim b'farish the Gemara is going to explain. I believe Rabbi Yashiv brings down from one of the Rishonim that although he's not mischalel permanently, the Rambam says while he is married to her, he is mischalel. Ad kidei kach, the Rabbi Yashiv brings down from somebody that while he's married to a woman that's also to him, could be he's even mutter to become tamei, because he's taka mischalel from his kahuna midaraisa. Until the Rambam says, until he gets rid of this wife, divorces this wife, and is makabel upon himself no longer to marry a woman who he's not allowed to marry. Sorry? The Rabbi Yashiv quotes from one of the Rishonim that says that the Shas, while he's married to this woman, he is mischal midaraisa, and therefore he doesn't have the other restrictions of kahuna. Kohenes mitamas l'meisip. A kohenes could be mitama l'meisip. The iser of a kohen being mitama, we're going to see in the Gemara, only applies to a male kohen, not a female kohen. But the ein kohen mitama l'meisip. Kohen oichel b'kotche kotchim. A kohen can eat kotche kotchim, and Rashi there's both a chatas, an osham, and a mincha, and by each one of them, it says called zocher ba'kohanim yechlanu. So only a male kohen can eat kotche kotchim. Bein kohenes oichelos b'kotche kodshim. Ma bein ish leisha. This is the question of 2023. What's the difference between a man and a woman? So Congress, every time they interview somebody who was nominated for some type of education portfolio or health portfolio, that's what the Congress asks him when they're vetting him. They ask what's the difference between a man and a woman. He keketzes and heketzes and he can't answer because everyone's a bunch of shvontzim toyevis today. But Baruch Hashem in the Torah, they still know the difference. Ma beinish leisha. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Ha'ish. I'm sorry. The will sich nicht, the machen sich nicht. Yeah. Ha'ish peireya u'peirein. If I ask anybody off the bat, halachically, what's the most obvious answer everybody knows? What's the Mishnah Nisha? What? Mishnah Nisha is non-grama, right? That is the classic. If anybody asks you, what's the main difference in halacha between Isha and Isha, you'll say Mishnah Nisha is non-grama. It's funny that the Mishnah doesn't mention that, so we're gonna talk about that soon. Ma ben Ish Isha, ha'ish peireya u'peirein. The halacha is one who is a mitzayra requires the Lublina strikes again. That's right. Batzura shebe'anega begadav yu ferumim v'roisha yu ferua v'asafam yata. He has to tear his clothing. He has to open up his hair. I only know because it's my mitzvah. So the God of your Rashi Perua. I'll stop him at the Tame Yikra. That's only a male Masorah. But they know Isha Perasu Paramas. But a woman does not do that. And again, the Gemara is going to bring psukim for everything. But Ish Mader is Benoy Benazir. We learned that already in Nazir that a man could be Mader his Benoy, but Isha Mader is Benoy. And we learned in Nazir, and the Gemara is going to tell us again over here that is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And remember the kasha that the Radak asked, how was Shimshon's mother able to be Makabel Naziris for him? Never do you find that an Isha could be Mader Benoy Benazir. Then we have a Ish Megalech al Nazir Salbin. What if a man was a Nazir and he died, but he already had set aside Karbonos, but he died, so they can't bring Karbonos for him. And his son is also a Nazir. His son is allowed to use those Karbonos that his father left over to discharge his own Naziris. And we had the Gemara, Shiloh could be the only works if he was Makabel Naziris after his father died, or maybe even before. A woman cannot use the Karbonos left over by her father. A man is allowed to marry his daughter off when she's a Ktana. A man can sell his daughter for an Amma Ivriya. And the Isha could not sell her daughter as an Amma Ivriya. We had this Shita earlier as well. A person is not covered up when you get skila. The Eina Isha is Galas Haruma. Remember, we had a machlokes both ways between skila, if a woman is niskala ruma versus the soita. Ha'ish nitla, the Eina Isha nitlas. A man is hung. They hang him just to the end of the day. The L'man Yishma Biro, people will see he got killed through Mrs. Bezdin, not an Isha. Ha'ish nimkar bignei vasai. A man is sold if he steals and he's unable to pay back. The Bezdin sells him as an Eved Ivri, and Ishanim cares bignei vasai. Now, Tosfos brings down a whole bunch of other things that are differences between a man and a woman. There's many things that there are differences. Let me see if Tosfos and Amud Alpha might be on Amud Beis. Yes, probably on Amud Beis. I remember seeing a Tosfos. So there's many more things that are differences between a man and a woman. First amongst them is the mitzvah saseh shazman groma. By the way, being that we're in the sugya, is Sviras Omer a mitzvah saseh shazman groma? The Ramban says Sviras Omer is not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. The Ramban says not a mitzvah shazman groma. So the Achrayim ask, well, why is it not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma? Why is it not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma? Or kiddush levana, is that a mitzvah saseh shazman groma? The Ramban says that's not either a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. Why not? That only happens once in a while. So the first Shemar Masber, mitzvah saseh shazman groma is a mitzvah that you could do any time, yet the Torah only is mechayiv you to do it at certain times. So sukkah, you could sit in the sukkah 24/7, 365. The Torah says, when should you sit in the sukkah during this week? That's a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. I think Shlomo Kluger says this. But if the Torah says, count 49 days from Pesach, so it's not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. The whole mitzvah isn't shayach any other time of the year. Or the Torah says, when you see a new levana, make a bracha. That's not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma because you could only make that, it's only shayach to do that action. It's only shayach to do that action at that time. So mitzvah saseh shazman groma is if you could do the action any time, but you're only mechuyev to do it at certain times. But if you could only do the action at the time where the mitzvah is mechayev you, that's not called a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. That's what they say to explain the Ramban. The Kubi Sfir Cyber is not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. At least according to the Ramban. There are those who actually learn it to Tal Sefer in the Ramban. And when it says Samachei, it means Sfir Hazofa. But the Ramban mentions many times in the Sefer that Samachei, which is Sfir Omer, is not a mitzvah saseh shazman groma. Zok the Gemara. Tana Rabban. Kol nesuais lekahuna. Anybody who's nesuais lekahuna, Don't think I just knew that as an agav piece of information. I had no idea. Rabbi Raza spoke it out. And any of these interesting facts, it's always Rabbi Raza speaking it out. But here it's mamash nagir because we're middle of Sfir Seimer. You can't count a period of time that is from Pesach L'Shavuos all year round because it's not that period of time. You can count a day, but the mitzvah is not to count a day. The mitzvah is to count from the day after Pesach. So therefore, that only happens. You can only make that counting then. So therefore, it's not a mitzvah says around grama. So we're going to go back on the Mishnah and we're going to elaborate. Ketzad. Kohanis Levi Yisraelis. Genesis Lakayin that married a Kayin. Ein minchas necheles. Her mincha is not eaten. Why? If sheyesh lo chelek ba. Sheyesh lo chelek ba. It might be her mincha, but her husband has a chelek in her mincha. However, the ein oilakolo. The regular mincha b'koyin, you don't make the kmitza. The whole mincha gets burnt on the mizbeach. This mincha that's being brought by the Sotah, you can't do that. You know why? She also is very relevant in this carbon. So it's like a hybrid. On the one hand, the chelek of her baal says it should all be burnt on the mizbeach and there should be no kmitza at all. But her chelek says there should be a kmitza and the shirayim should not be put on the mizbeach. So how do you deal with it? It's a hybrid. So what you do is you make the kmitza because that's what her mincha would need, and you would place it on the mizbeach. And the shirayim you'll place on the mizbeach, and there's no loss because by the kohen's mincha you don't need a kmitza. But if you did a kmitza, there's no harm done. So therefore, ikri affect Gemara, but you have a big problem. That's not going to work. Ikri kan kol shehu mimenu leishim hareyu b'bal saktiru. And let's look at the pasuk that the Gemara is referring to. It says kol mincha asher takrivu l'Hashem lo yisasa chametz ki chol za'or v'chol davash lo yisaktir mimenu isha l'Hashem. That is the pasuk shot of the pasuk that you're not allowed to bring a mincha with chametz. But Rashi points out that if it was just trying to say, the Torah was just trying to say that you shouldn't make a mincha of chametz, it should have said ki chol za'or v'chol davash lo yisaktiru l'Hashem. Because we know what we're talking about. We know we're talking about a mincha. Why did it have to say mimenu? The word mimenu is extra. So we make a whole new drasha about a whole new lav from this pasuk. Lo shaktir mimenu isha l'Hashem means lo shaktir mimenu, the mimenu, the part of a carbon that's supposed to go to the kohanim. Lo shaktir mimenu isha l'Hashem. You're not allowed to put that on the mizbeach. Now we have a problem. Because we thought, big deal, so we put it all on the Mizbeach for Moshe. You're not allowed to be makdir the Shirayim on the Mizbeach. There's an Isur Daraisa to be makdir Shirayim on the Mizbeach. So here you have a carbon, it's partially yours, partially your husband's. It's not a good eitzah just to put the whole thing on the Mizbeach. Because the part that's the Shirayim on the tzad that it's hers, you're not allowed to put on the Mizbeach. So Zok to Gemara, this is how we're going to deal with this problem. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Shimon ben Pazi, and this is the first mahalach the Gemara has. The masak lu l'shem eitzim. What you do is you put the part that was the shirayim. You have to put it on the mizbeach because if it's the mincha b'koyin, it all has to be burnt. But you don't put it on the mizbeach. L'shem being makaber carbon, you put it on the mizbeach as if it was eitzim. As if it was eitzim. What does that solve? What does that solve? So Zok Reb Chaim with a Tanai. So Chaim wants with a Tanai. So I'm going to tell you, Tosha says you're dead wrong. But I won't make you feel bad because Rashi says you're 100% right. So let's see Rashi. So Rashi says with a Tanai. But let's look at Rashi. Zokt Rashi, the Masak Lu L'Shem Eitzim, it's like 5-6 lines up in the skinny lines. The name of Hachi, which is like a Tanai. Im Ru'uyim Heim Lahaktir, meaning that it's her mincha. I'm sorry, wrong. If it was a koyin mincha, Ru'uyim Lahaktir, the shirayim was part of what you're being maktir. He did minchas koyin, and there's no din kmitza on this because the minchas koyin there is no kmitza on. Well, then harezu aktar l'shma. Then what I'm putting down on the mizbeach is aktar l'shma. Ukmitza loymayla v'loy meredes. The fact that you made a kmitza, big deal. So you did a kmitza, but it's all leishim. But if it's her mincha ve'elu shirah, and these are the shiraim, so you're not allowed to put it on the mizbeach. I'm treating it like a piece of wood. I'm not being makar with al carbon. I'm being makar with al eitz. So that sounds like a good shot, but Tosfos says absolutely not. This is not a suffix. We don't have a suffix if it's his or if it's hers. It's a hybrid. It's his and hers. A Tanai works if you're not sure of its status. But here we vadai know its status. So how could a Tanai possibly work? That's Tosfos' kasha. So Tosfos answers very, very geschmack. First off, he says, Uchamaduma, I'm halfway down in the Tosfos. It's about in the intermediate lines. It's about 6 or 7 lines up from the intermediate lines. And the first word on line is Uchamaduma. My Gemara, Uchamaduma is in bold. Uchamaduma, the Rashi nokat like agav shitvei dahi per noishin al anusa. The Tosfos says Rashi probably only mentioned the suffix is because in a different case, there is a case if it's one or the other. But about in our case, it's both. So therefore, you cannot say a Tanai over here at all. And what you have to say is you're being Yotze either way. So let me go up a few lines before Muduma. It's where it says Vachama in Zayin, the Loishayich Batnai here. The Leka Shum Suffolk, there's no Suffolk here. Elavada Miktsasan Ruya Lahaktir, Umiktsasan Lechoil Ulahaktir. But Oisan Masha Besoichen Ein Roy Lahaktir. The Shemaitzim Bechol Makim Shu, Loishayich Shum Tanai. So what he's saying is you have to say that it's not a Tanai, you're being Makkabit. And you're being Makkabit, but it's L'Shem Eitzim, so there's no problem with putting, even if it needs to be hooked out, there's no problem because it's still on the Mizbeach, but it's L'Shem Eitzim so that it won't cause a problem of being over on Mimenu. It's a stickle of a hybrid. It's not so poshut that it's just a Tanai. Okay, Gavaltik. So that's how it works. Zoktamor, that really works good. Karab Eliezer, the Tanya Eliezer Oymar, it says, L'Shektirim Isha L'Shem. So we darshan l'rech nichayich iatamala avol atamaleyu l'shum eitz. It's only l'rech nichayich that you can't be makrivit, but you could be makrivit l'shum eitz. Where does he get it from? That it's only l'rech nichayich that you can't, but you could l'shum eitz? Because the pasuk after the pasuk that we just quoted says carbon rachis takrivu oisam l'Hashem. So he darshans as follows. I'm going to go down 4 lines into the intermediate lines of Rashi. Right after the pasuk of Lozatir Mimenu, where we learn that you're not allowed to be makri shirayim on the mizbeach, the next pasuk says, Karbon rachis takrivu oisam l'Hashem. And what does that mean? It's going back on the previous pasuk. The previous pasuk says that you're not allowed to be makrif sa'or and devash, zok the Torah. But you know what you could use sa'or and devash for? For carbon ratios, because for bikurim you could bring tmorim, which is devash, and for the shtei halechem you could bring chametz. So that's where it's allowed. So it's really continuing the first pasuk. Carbon ratios takrivu oisal Hashem. So he learns, Rabbi Eliezer, that not only is this pasuk going back on the Sa'aru Devash halacha that we learned in the previous pasuk, but it's also going back on the halacha that we learned in the previous pasuk that tells you you're not allowed to be maktir shirayim. So therefore, he learns when it says at the end of the pasuk, "Vel hamizbeach lo yalu l'rech lichoyach koinami amimenu ishal Hashem lu'ukmei bebal taktiru." It's also going back on the halacha that you cannot be maktir shirayim. And it says you cannot be maktir shirayim is dafke if it's l'reich nichoyach. The Rashi says vashminim lo yozrak terosoi ela keshem miskaven l'reich nichoyach. If you're mechaven that it should be out carbon, then you can't put shirayim on the mizbeach. But if you're putting it on stamazoi, then it wouldn't be a problem. So that works out well if you have this drasha of Rabbi Eliezer. However, hanichal Rabbi Eliezer is le'aisvara el l'rabbanon the less lu'aisvara. The Rabbanon don't hold of that svara. So therefore it would be also to put shirayim on the mizbeach. Ma ikal meimar. How are they going to deal with this carbon sotah? What are they going to do with this carbon sotah? How are you going to deal with the shirayim? can't eat them, you can't burn them. So tomorrow he has another eitzah. The Avdilahu Kurabalosa B'Shimon. He's going to treat it like Rabalosa B'Shimon. The Tanya Rabalosa B'Shimon Oimer HaKoymet Karev Be'atzmoi. The Koymet your makrid. Vashirayim Mispazrin Al Beis Hadeshin. And the Shirayim you just put where you put the apostle of Karbonis. You put it on the Beis Hadeshin. So it will. So let's have a look how he dashes this, because there's an important Rashi over here. Haketet akaymitz karv la'atmoi v'ashirayin kraven la'atmon. So that's one shita. So that's not a shita of Rabbi Elazar B'Shimon. That's the Bar Plukta. So let's have a look into Rashi so we have it clear. Rabbi Elazar B'Shimon. The menachas repair elu menachas kav minchas chayta kayin the minchas chayta of a kayin. So this is like a carbon oil of a yored. A kayin did one of the following affairs. Shemiyas Koil, or Bitus Vasayim, either Shavuos Eidos, or he made a false Shvuah, or Thomas Mikdas V'Kedashav, and he's Dali Dalus, he's the poorest level of the carbon oil of a Yored, so the Kohen would bring a mincha. Upaligi Rabbanon later Rab Shimon, the Rabbanon argue on Rab Shimon, V'amri, V'haisel Kohen Kamincha, and we learn that Minchas Chayvasai shall Kohen Kolil, Kaminchas Nidvasai. The mincha of a kohen is brought kolo. There's no kamita down there. The Gersa changed it a little bit over here. Rab Shimon says it's kaminchas chayta shol yisrael, and in fact, this carbon oil of a yored mincha that a kohen brings does require kamita. Unlike a minchas nadav of a kohen, that's kulay kolo. This minchas chayta does need kamita. Shol yisrael masha yisrael nekametzes af minchas chayta shol kohen gets kamitza. If we're going to say that the mincha of an oil of a yard of a kohen is like that of a Yisrael, so its shiraim should be eaten to the kohanim. Zok the Gemara Talmud Leimer v'hoysel l'kohen kamincha l'kohen kamincha l'inyan avoidus kohen shetun kamitza v'loy l'ishim kamincha. It doesn't have completely the status of a minchas kohen. It has the status of minchas kohen that the shiraim cannot be eaten, but it does not have the status of a minchas kohen that the whole mincha is put on the mizbeach. Rather, only a kamitza is put on the mizbeach. So how do you deal with it? Ha ketzad ha koymitz karav la'atzmoi v'ashirayim kravim la'atzmoi. So the Rabbanan hold that you could be makriv the kamitza separately and the shirayim separately. Didn't we learn that you could not be makriv shirayim on the mizbeach because of the isha of mimenu? The less lay call shamimenu leishim klal. The Tanakama holds. He argues on this whole concept that we said, that you cannot be maktir on the mizbeach, things that are shirayim. He argues on that whole premise. We're going with that kasha. So Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon Polagalei, Rabbi Elazar argues and says, "V'amar kaimitz karev la'atzmai v'shirayim mispazim le'ibud." So therefore, just like by the minchas chayta of a kohen, you could do that. So too by this minchas chayta, which has a component of kohenin, you'll be maktir the kmitz on the mizbeach, and the shirayim will just be mispazim al beis hadesh. So that's how you deal with this minchas chayta. If she's the wife of a kohen, we have three ways. Either there's no problem with men each, we put the whole thing on the mizbeach, or B, your mila, the kaimitz regular and the shirayim, your maktul shemeitzim, or C, your mispazer it on the beis hadesh. So that's how we could deal with it. Even the Rabbanon who argues on the Rabbanon, the Rabbanon who say, like we just quoted, by the Minchas Kohen, there he holds that you could put the whole thing on the Mizbeach because it's the Bas HaKrav. Over here, even the Rabbanon would be moidu, in fact, that you cannot put it on the Mizbeach, so you have to be mispazer it on the Makom Hadesh. Okay, now we have the next case. Bas Yisrael Hanasua, a Bas Yisrael who was Nasua for a Kohen. So, even the Rabbanon who over there say that you could put it on the Mizbeach and there's no problem of Mimenu, by a Kohen who does an Aveir and he's Mechuyev Nol V'Yored, so he brings a Mincha. So even the Rabbanon there who holds you could put everything on the Mizbeach. No, that's Reb Shimon. That's Reb Shimon ben Elazar. That's Reb Elazar ben Shimon. The Rabbanan Rashi says holds he doesn't hold of the problem of Bimenu, but that's only if it's not his carbon, if it's the Kohen's carbon. But here it's the Kohen's carbon and it's her carbon, so you have to deal with it. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Zok to Gemara weiter. So where do you get this from? That the Minchas Kohen, you're making the whole thing on the Mizbeach. My time of Damakra, the whole Minchas Kohen Kol Tia Loy Seachel, and it's Kohen V'loy Kohenes. So therefore, if she's an Eishes Kohen, it has this restriction. But if she's a Kohenes, Eishes Yisrael, or if it's just a Kohenes, bringing a carbon, Mincha, her Mincha will have a Kemitza done and the Shirayim and Echol. Kohenes Mischaleles, Kohen Ein Mischalel. Minolon, how do you know this? The Amar Kra, V'lo Yechalel Zar Oy Be'amot. So we learn from here that Zaroi Mischalel, when the Kohen is in a bad relationship, his children become Mischalel, who ain't Mischalel, he does not become Mischalel. Kohenes Mitama, a Kohenes is allowed to become Tamei Lamesim. My timer, Omer Kra, Emer Ela Kohanim, B'nei Aharon, V'loi B'nei Saharon. Kohen Oichel B'kodja Kodashim, Yechsiv Kol Zochor, B'nei Aaron Yoichlem. Uma Ben Ish L'Isha. So here is where we have a fascinating Toshus, but let's just quickly see the Gemara. Uma Ben Ish L'Isha, Tanur Rabbanan, Ein Li Ela Ish. Isha B'nayin. How do you know that an Isha also has the rules of Tsaras, and the Isha also, if she is proven to be a Mitzaras, she has to isolate herself if she's Tameh. Yeshu Omer B'Hatzarua Asher Boy Harekan Shnayim. B'Hatzarua doesn't itemize Dafka male, so it includes both. Imkain Matam Loimer Ish. Why does it say Ish? And where does it say Ish? It says Ish when it's speaking about the parsha of Tahira of the Nesek. Also in this week's parsha, it says Ish Tzurahu Tamehu Tamei Yitemenu Akoyim B'Rosh Nigoy. But it says Ish Tzarua. So where it talks about the general process of a Tzarua, it says V'Hatzura Asher B'Yaneged because if you from him. So that seems to be referring to everybody. But in an earlier pasuk, it says Ish Tzaruahu, Tafka Ish. So is it both an Ish and an Isha, or is it only an Ish? So to Gemara, Im Kematam Lam Ish LeInyan Shalamata. Lagabi what? That an Ish is Pereya Uparim, but an Isha is not. Is which says Vatzarua is both. Yes, that's right. So let's have a look over here at Tosis, because this is a very interesting Tosis. He shows with us a lot of things. Ma b'nish l'isha. In the Tosefta, it actually lists many more things. Kachoshev over al mitzvos asay shezman grama masha ein kain b'isha. Right. So that was the very first thing, the flagship. That's the icon example of the difference. And ha'ish over al bal takif val bal tashchis. A man may not cut his face nor his beard, but a woman not. Val bal titamal amazim masha ein can be isha. Another difference. Ha'ish nidoin b'ben saru mayra. Another difference. V'netaf u'misaper. Ve'ina isha netefes u'misaperes. I'm not sure what this is. Oh, misaper is what? Oh, so this is referring to in the process of tires. Okay, that's right. But it has a different nusach here. Okay, ha'ish nimkar v'nishna. A man can be sold as an eved ivri and then sold a second time. Ve'ina isha nimkares v'nishnas. Once a father sells his daughter, even and then she becomes free for whatever reason, nevertheless he won't be able to do it again. Ha'ish nirtza, an eved ivri who wants to stay forever has the process of ritzua. V'nimkar le'eved ivri. The koina le'eved ivri, and he could buy an eved ivri. Ve'in isha nitzas, a woman cannot be nitzas. V'nim keres, and she's not sold, meaning but by bezdin. V'koina, and she can't buy. V'loy katani asam kolhani. The masnisin over there in the Tosefta, it doesn't list off those that we list here. So we see there's two lists, and in one place it uses one list, and in one Mishnah uses the other list. Ella, there's a koy bebitay. All it says over here is that he's zoichet to be able to sell his daughter. So the fire shasam the kesev ubishtar ubiyah. B'tema, Amay lechashiv nami smichos tenufos hagashos ukmitzos the bein kohen lekahenes. Why doesn't it say that there's a difference between a mincha that a kohen brings versus the mincha of a kohenes about what it needs? V'chol hani ditnan b'per kamet kedushin. V'loy ketani nami. Another thing that's missing is shar ivri yotze b'shanim u'v'yovel u'v'misas ha'adon. And the Eved Ivri goes out if he's there for 6 years, if Yovel comes, or if the Adon dies. Mashen can be Ivriya. And the Ivriya goes out with other ways. She goes out with Shanim, but she also, I'm sorry? I know, but she also, but I don't think she goes with Mr. Adon. Hazav Matama B'Re'iyos. Hazav is Matama with Re'iyos, V'loy Hazava, but not Hazava. You know, Hazav could have multiple Re'iyos on one day, and they'll be Matamas. No, it doesn't have to be on different days. Mashek and the Zava, it has to be on specific days. Mitzayra also b'tasma shamita. A male mitzayra is not allowed relations, but v'loy mitzayras, a female mitzayra could have relations. So there's many more differences. Tosfos points out between the ish and the isha. So the next time they're questioning a guy in Congress, what's the difference? He can easily quote the Tosfos and the Gemara. When they can learn them, you'll be able to get out of their questions. Okay. Zok to Gemara weiter. Okay. Zok to Gemara weiter. Ish madres benoy benazir, veina isha madres es benoy benazir. Amar b'yaychanan, where do you know this from? Halacha hi benazir. It's a halacha l'moshe b'sinai. Ish megalayach al nazir ovid, veina isha megalachas al nazir saviyah. Amar b'yaychanan, again, halacha hi benazir, that's also a halacha l'moshe b'sinai. Ish mekadesh es bitai, veina isha mekadesh es bita. Ichsiv es biti nasati le'ishazeh. So you see that he could marry off his daughter, but you don't find that he could marry off his son. Or you don't find that a lady could do it. Ha'ish moicher es bitoi, veina. Right, okay. Ha'ish moicher es bitoi, veina isha moicher es bita. Ichsiv ki yimker ish es bitoi, not a mother. Ha'ish niskal arum, my timer. It says v'ragmu oisoi. So let's look at the psukim because this is going to be also an interesting limud. Zokt the pasuk inside. It says Haitze es hamakalel al mechutz lamachane v'shamchu kol hashayim mishideim al roishoi v'ragamu oisoi kol ha'eda. So let's see what it says over here. V'ragamu oisoi, my oisoi. What is the oisoi over there? Ilayma oisoi v'aloi oisa. If you're going to tell me that you only give skila to a man and not to a woman, that's not true. Vaksiv by a naira hamurasa, but it says it's a ishahu, or yes a ishahi, and you give them both skila. So you see, in fact, a woman gets skila. So the Baragmu Oisai cannot tell us that you don't give a woman skila, but it is being mamayit a woman from something. Oisai beloy ksusai, beloy oisa beloy ksusa. Him you make skila on without his clothing. A woman, you're going to give skila with clothing. Ha'ish nitla ve'ina ish nitla, my timer. Amar krav v'salisa oisoi aleit oisoi ve'loi oisa. Ha'ish nimka b'gnei v'asoi ve'ina ish nimkeres b'gnei v'asa. My timer. Amar krav v'nimka b'gnei v'asoi ve'loi b'gnei v'asa. Tosfos asks a very, very interesting kasha. We have a limud, a special limud, that a woman cannot be sold, which means the only way for a woman to be sold is if her father sells her. Bezdin cannot sell a woman because it doesn't say v'nimka b'gnei v'asa. So Bezdin could sell a man, Bezdin could not sell a woman. Based on that information, Tosfos Tema. So now if a woman steals and she doesn't have the money to pay back, there's no recourse. Bezdin can't sell her. The Bezdin ain't moichin ela b'gnei v'asai, like we just learned in our Gemara. Yet, ubeper kamen kedushin memaiti rabbanon murza es oznoi shaloi v'loi oizen shal moicher atmai. In kedushin, the Gemara tells us that who could become an eved oilam by becoming mirza? Only an eved who sold himself. If Bezdin originally sold him, the whole parsha of the Ritzias Oizen does not apply to such a person. The Davka, exactly the opposite of what I said. I'm sorry. Davka, they sold him. The Davka Machru Bezdin Nirza. The only person, the only type of Eved Ivri that can be nirtza is only if he was sold, but not if he sold himself. So oibazoi, by definition, a woman cannot be nirtza, because by definition, we said here in Argamor that the bezin could never sell a woman, since you could only have the process of ritzias oizen by someone who bezin sold, and Argamor tells us from a pasuk that bezin cannot sell a woman. So therefore, v'isha hoyel bein bezin moichenoisa anoya dana then in itzas. So it's pashut that she can't have the process of ritzia because she's not an eved ever that's going to be sold. So why is it that the Rabbanan in Kedushin needed to bring a special limud that the parsha of Ritzias Eisen doesn't apply to a woman? Of course it can't apply to a woman, because a woman cannot be sold by Bezdin. Since the only way for an Ameh of Riyah to be sold is to be sold by a father, so kedaita chamina to have a mechira de av b'mokay mechiras bezdin. I would have thought, since that's the only way for a woman to be sold, we'll consider it like mechiras bezdin, and maybe she could be nirtza, v'sirtza, that she cannot. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we were zoicha to finish the third parak. Hadin aloch b'lineder, hadin aloch haynoito, hadin aloch haynoito, hadin aloch haynoito. Zok the helig of Mishnah Baiter. Arusa v'shemeres yavim. An arusa and the shemeres yavim loy shoysos. So even if the husband made kinui and there was stira, they don't have the remedy of drinking the mesaita. Loy shoysos, and Rashi says there's a pasuk for it. But she's a sophic usher to her husband, so therefore v'loy noitlos ksuba. She won't get her ksuba either. He has to divorce her, but she does not get her ksuba. Shenemar asher sister isha tachas isha. It's the parsha of Soita, the remedy of Soita only works if this occurred while she was under her husband, meaning a Nesua, Prat La Rusa Vishemeres Yom. Rashi tells us, you know why? Shehi Garma Lesser Atzma Olav Shenister Acharkinoi. Because the question you could ask is, Be'etzim, she has a Cheskas Tahira. She has a Cheskas Tahira. Sure, there's Reglaimud over, but indeed, she has a Cheskas Tahira, so why should she lose her Ksuba? The teretz is, because she brought this upon herself. The Mikina v'Isser loyimit. There is no miyut. The fact that kinui will aser her. The miyut is only that you don't have the remedy. But kinui will aser. Kinu and stira will aser her. The Mikina v'Isser loyimit kidem afarish v'gemar. V'afilu less under Rabam Nuna, even if you don't hold like Rabam Nuna. The shemeres yavim shezinsa muteres liyabama. Even if you don't hold like Rav Huna. Rav Huna holds the shemeres yavim shezinsa is muteres liyabma. Nevertheless, nehi the muteres, even though it's muter, still miu loy boy leminsav isha zoyna. So you might ask, according to Rav Huna, shemeres yavim shezinsa is aser l'bayla, but according to us, it's muter l'bayla. So if it's muter l'bayla, she's a shemeres yavim, she was mzana, he's still allowed to do even on it. So if she's not aser to him, why doesn't he have to give her her ksuba? If she caused herself to be aser on him, Mamela, she loses her ksuba. But she's not aser to him. Dr. Rashi, yes, she's not aser to him. But you think he wants to marry a woman who's promiscuous? Avadi doesn't. So that's enough that will take away her ksuba, and he doesn't have to marry her. Okay? Almana l'kohen gadol. What if it's an illegal marriage? It's an almana that was married to a kohen gadol, or grusha v'chalutza l'kohen hedyet, or mamzeres unesina liYisrael. So these are all women who their husbands are not allowed to be married to them, or ubas Yisrael and mamzer unesin. There it's loy shoysos v'loy noitos ksuba. Again, since they're it's usher, they don't have the remedy of soita. As Rashi says, it's only the parsha of soita is only biruya lekaima, because it says kisista ishtoi. Ishtoi means she's his legal wife. The elu and the following list of people loy shoysos v'loy noitos ksuba. The following women don't drink and don't get ksuba. Ha'imeres tameani. If a woman says tameani, so she's moida, or v'shabola edem she tameya, or if Edom came along and said that she's tamei, the ha'imeres eni shoisa, and the woman who said, I refuse to drink. Zok to Gemara, Zok to Mishnah. Amar baila eni mashke. What if her husband said, I don't want to do it? He's afraid, he doesn't want to go through with it. Or v'shabaila ba'al labadera. Or her husband was ba'al labadera. So kum techais, he was the one who caused it. Then noitless ksuba v'loy shoysa. Then they do get their ksuba, but they don't drink. Why? Because that's not her fault. I want to point out an interesting Rashi. Rashi says over here. No, it's a little bit. It's a little weiter in the Gemara. I'm sorry. Okay, Mesu by Leyan. What if their husbands died? Achalei shasu. So you have a woman with a soita, everything's ready to go, but her husband died, and this is a regular soita with no problem. They will get their ksuba and they don't drink anymore. They don't get their ksuba unless they're willing to drink. But they can't drink because once their husband dies, the soita doesn't work anymore. So Zokt Rashi, what it means is, since they can't drink to clear the name, therefore, loy neitlas ksuba. Okay, let's stop here and we'll leave Amshach tomorrow. So we'll learn tomorrow 1 hour before Mincha, and I'm not sure what time Mincha is. And for Daniel Finkel's group, we're going to start 1.5 hours before Mincha. I don't think in that half hour we'll be able to catch up 3 blot, but whatever I catch up, and then they'll join us.